Maybe you've heard that old rabbinic story where the rabbi is trying to contemplate the meaning of life, and he has an idea to carry 2 stones, one in each pocket. And on one stone is written, "I am dust, I am nothing." And in the other pocket, he carries another stone, and on it is written, "The universe was made for me." And I thought of that story a few minutes ago because a lot of what I'm going to say in the next few minutes is a little like a paradox. And paradox technically means to cast alongside something straight, or to cast 2 things alongside one another, kind of like the rails of a train track. And they're somehow different, but there's something about casting 2 things alongside one another. Like, you're dust, and also the universe was made for you. Or, like Jung says, life is a luminous pause between 2 great mysteries, birth and death. Or I thought of Mary Oliver saying, one of her, among her billion, thousand amazing lines, doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? You know, it's like saying, here we are, and some are gone, and we will all go, and we all want to stay, and sometimes we don't want to stay, and we only experience not wanting to stay and staying in the here and now of staying and being here. So it's like paradox upon paradox, and and we're all going to go. You know, we're all going to go, and some of us are going to. I thought of this like amazing thing that happened to me. I was in Bears Ears National Monument a couple of years ago. It's this pristine and wild and hidden part of Utah, part of the landscape of the American West that's still untouched, to quote Thomas Merton, untouched by sin and illusion, where you can go and drink from the stream, the same stream where cougar and bear also drink, in waters that are 50,000 years old. I'm not going to tell you where it is because I don't want you to know. And I was 9 days backpacking there once, and I was wandering along the trail, and it was the morning, and mid-morning, and I came around the corner, and right next to the trail in the sunshine, next to a ponderosa pine, was a dead bobcat, pristine, as if it had just wandered out of the forest and found a lovely place to die, which is probably exactly what happened. No worms, no bugs, no animals had their way with this creature. It just seemed like a good place to die in the sunshine, in the smell of a ponderosa pine. Have you ever smelled a ponderosa pine? What a scent. And I had this feeling like, yeah, I would like to die this way. I'd like to wander out in the sunshine and lay down next to a pine tree. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen. Some of us, it may be me, the final act may be to throw the bedpan across the room. I don't know. We have our hopes, we have our aims, but then there's the mystery of who we are and the mystery of the moment. So some of us will throw the bedpan, some of us will welcome death. You know, some of us will fight, some of us will surrender. Maybe we'll all do all of the above. And so I kept thinking about these lines. This really, you know, I had an idea I wanted to talk about some of these things, but it was talkback that really, pre-talk, which you should come to, really brought these things to the surface. We're talking about mortality for 45 minutes. And all these lines were coming to me, like from dust you came, to dust you shall return. Or like Wayne said, it's a Buddhist phrase, you're like a wave in the ocean. Or I might add, from God we came, to God we shall return. Or if you'd like this, the universe breathes in and the universe breathes out. Yeah. So I guess I want to share a series of paradoxes. I want to read a few things. And I thought I'd read from Phil's last meditation, just to start us off. He gave a meditation on running not that long ago. And I want to read from the second section here. He tells 3 stories about running. And running as a metaphor for life, really. Here's the second part of it. I ran a half marathon around Spring Lake, beginning and ending in Spring Lake Central Park. I started off well, but I began slowing by the 10th mile as I went up and down the inclines. I changed from running to brisk walking up the hills. I soon realized that a young woman not far from me, whom I have never seen before, had also begun to alternate running with walking. During the last mile, we were both struggling. We crossed the bridge and headed east on our way back to Central Park. Without really thinking, I caught up with her, touched her arm, and called out, "Come on, we got this." And from there, we ran together, matching each other's pace, increasing our efforts. Finally, we crossed the finish line together. I saw her again briefly as she hugged her small daughter and her mother. We never talked or knew each other's names, but we had shared that exhilarating experience. Running is a funny thing. I do a lot of running and biking and swimming, which is a very solitary kind of thing. And you don't train, well, I suppose you could train in a group for a half marathon, but who's the one doing the training? It's the individual. It's a very lonely thing. And there's something paradoxical about kind of the beauty of this story and the beauty of running like this that Phil had committed, a lot of his life to enjoying. And so here he is running, and like life itself, he had to slow down and alternate between running and walking. That's not only a metaphor, that's the way it is. And there's something very human-like in that story. Like, I set out to run 13 miles, and I got to mile 10, and my own humanity took over. And that's the very moment that binds Phil with this unknown person, Just another woman who was alternating between running and walking. It's like there's isolation and human warmth and connection kind of in the same paradoxical mix. And it's like we, in the loneliness of running, and I'm speaking literally and metaphorically, that's the place where we find kind of like mutual support in this strange kind of paradox. Where a solo effort, we meet the other. It's also kind of like saying life is hard and life is good at the same time. It's kind of like experiencing that life is hard and life is good at the same time. It's actually the difficulty of not being able to run up a hill that made that moment good. Do you know what I'm saying? Someone asked me, I was going out on a ridiculous bike ride. That involved a lot of climbing of mountains. And someone said, "Why do you do this?" And it just came out of my mouth without thinking. I said, "I like suffering." But I do. I mean, I like to feel alive in that way, but it's that strange combination of I'm mortal and I'm enjoying the feeling of my own mortality. And I don't know, human beings have a proclivity for this sort of thing. They like to challenge themselves in that way. It makes us feel alive, and it connects us, I think, back to our theme, to a sense of what we share in common. We share in common that life is hard and life is also good. And it's almost as if we come to discover what's good when life is hard, and the other way around, I suppose. And to experience difficulty, I think, and to share it is what creates a certain amount of beauty. That's what was happening in pre-talk as we were just going around the circle saying things like, how was your week? How are you feeling? What are you thinking about? What is consciousness? That also came up. What does it mean to be an I in the world? And so somehow sharing, I think, the difficulty of life is what makes it beautiful and part of what brings us together. What is it that we share other than the most ordinary things? Just the most ordinary things. Here's a poem by Mary Oliver. It's a poem called Everything. I want to make poems that say right out plainly what I mean. I wanted to be a poet when I was younger, and I went to college and took poetry classes and things like this. And I thought being a poet was saying things that were obscure or deep or something like that. Mary Oliver has set the record straight. I want to make poems that say right out plainly what I mean. That don't go looking for laces of elaboration or puffed sleeves. I want to keep close and use often words like heavy, heart, joy, and soon. And to cherish the question mark and her bold sister, the dash. I want to write with quiet hands. I want to write while crossing the fields that are fresh with daisies and everlasting and the ordinary grass. I want to make poems while thinking of the bread of heaven and the cup of astonishment. Let them be songs in which nothing is neglected. Nothing is neglected. Not a hope, not a promise. I want to make poems that look into the earth and the heavens and see the unseeable. I want them to honor both the heart of faith and the light of the world. The gladness that says, without any words, everything. What I hear in here is a call to cherish the ordinary. That somehow the ordinary and the plainness and the normalness of life itself and another human being and the most basic interactions and the smell of the grass is also what is most astonishing. It doesn't actually require any fancy words, just the plain truth of the way things are. Ordinary words like heart and heavy and joy and soon. So there's a kind of paradox. In the ordinary, we also taste what is astonishing. Here's another passage from Gary Snyder. It's not as plain as Mary Oliver, but it'll do. The involuntary quick turn of the head in a shout, the vertigo of looking off a precipice, the heart in the throat in a moment of danger, the catch of the breath, the quiet moments of relaxing, staring, reflecting, all universal responses of this mammal body. I'll read it again. This is just you being you. I was in the Tetons this summer, and I heard some rustling in the woods by a stream, and I thought, I'll go see what this rustling is. And I came around the corner with my daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, and just as I was coming around the corner, I thought, this is kind of a dangerous situation. I don't know what I'm hearing, other than it's a loud rustling. I'm hoping it's a moose, or maybe I'm hoping it's something else. And the stream is loud, and the wind is blowing in my face. This is not the best situation to be in. So I came around the corner only to see a lovely, full-grown grizzly bear looking at us, with their cute little ears. Yes, yeah. Yeah. Now I'll read it. The involuntary quick turn of the head and a shout. The vertigo of looking off a precipice. The heart in the throat in a moment of danger. The catch of the breath. The quiet moments relaxing, staring, reflecting. All universal responses of this mammal body. Plain ordinary humanness that we share. They can be seen throughout the class. The body does not require the intersection of some conscious intellect to make it breathe, to keep the heart beating. Like, you don't say beat, beat, beat. Okay, still beat. It just does the thing that it's doing. It is to a great extent self-regulating. It is a life of its own, this mammal body that we have. Sensation and perception do not exactly come from outside. And the unremitting thought and image flow are not exactly inside, he says. The world is our consciousness, and it surrounds us. There are more things in mind, in the imagination, than you can keep track of. Thoughts, memories, images, angers, delights rise unbidden. The depth of the mind, the unconscious, are our inner wilderness areas. And that is where the bobcat is right now. What a strange passage. He's saying something like this, as far as I can understand it. You're just a mammal, walking around. You're just scared when you're standing on the edge of a precipice, or when a grizzly bear looks at you from 20 feet away in the tall grass. And you can't keep your own heart beating. You don't have to remind yourself to breathe. It just happens. And yet, there's this other side that we call consciousness and thought and image and memory. And it rises unbidden, and it too is like a wilderness. As we experience the otherness of the world as just mammals, there's also a kind of inner otherness. I don't know why he says this, but he says that's where the bobcat is right now. What does he mean? I don't know. But rising up in image, I don't know. So another paradox. We are both animal and imagination. That's what I think is at play here. We're both just mammals, and we're Homo imaginus, if I can change our name from sapien to imagination. Rising unbidden in the wilderness of our own unconscious. What a strange thing to be alive. What a strange gift. Which brings me back to Stafford's poem. I want to read it again because it's a bit of a challenging poem, but you could actually like a good old-fashioned sermon where the preacher says, now, there are usually three things that you can do. I'll just give you one, which is if you want to know what he's talking about, go down there to the muddy God known as the Grand River and stand there and look at the ice. Here's what he says. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Is what you have done, is that your life? Go ahead and ask me these questions. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought. And some have tried to help or hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. I will listen to what they say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden. And there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. I think about questions like, what difference have any of us made? Well, what the river says, that's what I say. What about our loves and our losses? What about the people that have hated us or loved us? What about the people that we've loved? What about the people we've hated? Not that any of you have done that. What about all that? Well, what the river says, that's what I say. What about the hidden currents of our own life that have been flowing from God knows where? What about that? Well, what the river says, that's what I say. What about Milt and Phil and what they have left us and the hole that we feel and others that you know that you've lost this year or who are coming unbidden in your mind right now, like the bobcat from God knows where? Well, what the river says, that's what I say. Or Beth's question from that little passage she read. Why am I here? Well, what the river says, that's what I say. Thanks for listening.